We get a lot of insight to Mikoto's character in this episode of Durarara. And probably by far, this is one of the best episodes of Durarara's return because of some of the dialogue we got in this episode. That kind of clarified a lot with Mikoto's character. And that would be that he has never changed. He has never changed, he's just always put on this face, this mask of making him look like he is normal when he really is not. Here's the thing, I remember at the beginning of the series, the first season, I remember this is one of the main things that was kind of talked about when the series first began, and then it was talked about and mentioned earlier on in Season 2, a couple of times, that Mikoto was always a little bit different. I mean, when he made the dollars, you know, stuff happened, and I mean, he wasn't really in his right normal mind, and then also finding out how he wanted to live a normal life, but not a normal life, and how everything is, like, boring and stuff, and that was, like, one of the main things about his character we found out a long time ago when the series first began. And then when you see this episode and you see this brought up, it's like a light pops back up in your head and you're like, oh shit, he has never changed. He's actually been the exact same all along. It's just he's been putting on this mask. He's been hiding his true self. And we get to see how different he is, or how abnormal Mikoto is as a character compared to anyone else, and how we usually perceive him as a person. And I love that about this episode, and I love the way this episode was trying to go out of its way to let us know that Izaya and Mikoto are actually very similar in certain ways with how they act, or how they don't really act normal in some ways. And that's very scary. I like how the entire conversation between Mikoto and Izaya was very even. Like, I mean, there were still some cases to where Izaya seemed to be on higher ground than Mikoto, and usually when someone's having a conversation with Izaya, it's like one-sided. Izaya is the one controlling the entire conversation. He's the one leading the person on. He's the one getting all the information, and, you know, he's just pretty much playing the person like a fiddle. And with this conversation, it was completely different from the normal type of manipulation that Izaya usually does, or what we see from his conversations. It had it to where even Izaya in some points, he was actually kind of shocked or amused with what was going on, and it emphasizes this throughout the entire episode when you have it to where Mikoto's saying things and he's like making Izaya all happy and cheerful, like he's skipping and he's like just, you know, like spinning around and just getting all fucking happy, and he even points at this random dude, scares the shit out of him. It just goes to show you that Izaya was even shocked and he couldn't really understand the entire situation as much as he normally does, is because of how Mikoto was acting. So I have to hand it to this episode of Durarara for being a very good episode with showcasing how different of a person Mikoto is from a normal human being, but also how abnormal, but how he puts on this face that makes it look like he is normal. So very good stuff right there. I really like the writing of Mikoto's character after this episode. But talking about other things though, besides, you know, Best Boy Izaya and Mikoto, you know, just having this conversation, which, oh my god, one of the best parts of the episode, let's talk about the other stuff. The other half of this episode focuses on 3 Psychas. Now, holy shit, the amount of Psychas in this series, just like, oh my. And then seeing them all in one spot, talking with each other, you know shit's gonna happen. And there's gonna be some serious plot progression. That's exactly what was going on in this episode. So before we even get to that, mainly this episode can be summarized into 2 different parts. You have it to where the first half kind of, or majority of the episode's like mixed and matched here and there, but majority of the episode can be split into 2 segments. You have it to where, you know, 3 Psychas meet up, they're having conversations, and then the second half is, you know, Mikoto and Izaya talking with each other, and we're getting to see a little bit more insight to the overall plot of this arc. So now, getting off of that, let's talk about, you know, the 3 Psychas. So with the 3 Psychas, you having their conversation, they come to find out that Henri has not been using Psycha to the best possible usage. For instance, Psycha is not really being used at the best way, or not being used in the best way, and that was quite surprising, because we probably all never expected to see something like that, with how Henri could use Psycha in a better way than she already is. She's not using it the best way possible, but also the way it was done, to where this conversation was done with these 3 Psychas, how they were talking, and how they were like, oh, you can, you know, give Psycha over to us, or me, and I'll take it off your hands. And I feel like this is going to add a very very huge dilemma in the future for Henri as a character. Because if someone's trying to take away her Psyche, it makes me believe that maybe one day there's going to come a time, maybe in this series, maybe we might not see it, there is supposedly going to be another season, there's going to come a time to where maybe Henri's going to have to make a decision. Does she want to continue to be slightly like a monster or a parasite, as she kind of calls herself, or does she want to give that up and try to be like a normal human being? Because this is one of the main things that have been kind of wrapped around Henri's character for a while now, and even Izai, he brought it up to the surface with last week's episode of saying, you're not even human, you're like, you know, a monster trying to pretend to be a human, and that brings up a very huge question. I mean, what type of decision is Henri gonna make when someone actually eventually offers her once again, do you want to hand over Psyche? It leaves a question, but the main thing is, though, is Henri as a character, she's actually coexisting with Psyche. She's not controlling Psyche, and Psyche hasn't made Henri go mad. They're coexisting as if they have a mutual bond between each other. So I also love how that was dived into with this week's episode of Durarara. So overall, episode, very wonderful, good development, a lot of setup here and there throughout the entire episode with different scenes, little scenes throughout, that will probably build up to the conclusion later on. We have to where the Yellow Scarves are getting attacked, or they might get attacked in next week's episode, so I can't wait. We're most likely going to be getting a Kita episode in next week's episode of Durarara, and then we have other things going on. So, I mean, yeah, wonderful episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please be safe. Chibi out.